Hello there. Hope you're doing marvelously well. So, as ever, please subscribe. Go to producelikeapro.com and you can sign up for the email list and get a whole bunch of free goodies. Okay, let's do the top 10 recording tips. There'll probably be a part 2, 3, 4, or 5, but this is my top 10 recording tips. Because as you notice, this is called Produce Like a Pro. So it's not always just about mixing. It is a lot to do with recording. So what is my top 10 recording tips? Number 1, and this is one that's come up a lot with engineers and producers and mixers. Whenever I interview people, they mention this one a lot. Number 1, commit to a sound. If you've got a great drum sound, a great guitar sound, whatever it might be, commit to it, print it. Once you commit to a sound, you can be inspired to try something else on it. If you're always generically printing something to figure the tone out later, you'll probably find that your whole session could become generic. But if you get an exciting guitar sound and you're doing another overdub, it will inspire something else. If you can, commit to a sound, because also mixers will love it when they get an idea of the sonic landscape that you have created. So, number 1, commit to a sound. Number 2, pre-production is key. If you're working with a band or even a solo artist, doing pre-production before you even get into the studio is fantastic. It's a wonderful opportunity to work on the songs, on the arrangements, the tempos, the keys, the lyrics, maybe working on the melody ideas, the chord structure. You can do so much in pre-production before you even press record or even put a mic up in front of something. Pre-production is huge. Also, something that we don't always talk about, what's great about pre-production, it gives you an opportunity to establish a relationship with the artist. As the producer, you can get in there and talk to them about their songs, work on the lyrical ideas, push them a little bit to sort of strive for greatness. And by doing that, you'll build a great relationship with your artist. So when you do come in to record, they will trust you. That's another important thing about pre-production, is building trust with your artist. Number 3, this one's so important and probably could come first. Get your sound source right first. Get the right sound source. It doesn't matter if it's the world's most vintagey, expensive, handmade instrument. If it's out of tune, it's out of tune. It doesn't matter if it's the world's most expensive fuzz pedal. If you're getting like a buzz right through the middle of it, it's still going to sound like poop. You need to get your sound source right at first. Get a really, really good sound source, something that's inspiring for the musicians so they get an incredible performance. Then worry about how you're going to capture it after that. You need a great sound source first. Number 4, when tracking, don't be afraid to use high-pass filters, especially on microphones. If you're tracking an acoustic guitar, if you're tracking overheads, if you're tracking a tambourine and a vocal, and there's like room noise, there's traffic noise outside, there's air conditioning hum sometimes, there's all kinds of situations where you'll get like low rumble. Even in some of the nicest studios I've been, I've had issues like that, believe it or not. But obviously in a home environment, it can be much, much worse. So if you've got like a 60 hertz high pass on it, and it's not a kick drum, and it's not something that's going to need that super lows, then don't be afraid to use it. Tracking, getting it right at source like that is really, really huge. And I know there's a lot of confusing talk about high passing, but high passing correctly and smart can really clean up your recording process and your mixing process. So don't be afraid to use the high pass filter on your microphone or on your preamp, so you get the sound source right. Obviously, be smart about it. Don't go up to like 150 on a bass guitar. There's no reason really to high pass a bass going in unless you're doing like a cabinet miking another cabinet. Maybe you want to go in at 20 or something because there's some low rumble because you've got a 15-inch speaker miking a 15-inch. But let's be honest, in most situations, high passing at source done properly will save you a lot of headaches and make mixing quicker and easier. And roughs will come up beautifully. So don't be afraid to high pass when necessary. Number 5, stereo or mono. This is a big one because I've done this so many times, especially when I was up and coming. I would stereo mic everything. I would put room mics on everything. So I'd have like an acoustic guitar, and I close mic the acoustic guitar and then put some stereo room mics on it. And before you know, everything had stereo room mics on it, and I pushed up my mix, and it was just a big lot of reverberated mess of my room. Be careful. Stereo miking is a wonderful thing, but do you need to? Many instances, in fact, 99% of the time when I'm recording my upright for piano, for instance, I use an AEA ribbon mic, a mono ribbon mic, just pulled back, picking up the whole sound of the piano. It's very rare, I do it, but it's very rare that I stereo mic my upright. There are so many things like that where I don't need to stereo mic. Now, I've learned the hard way. I used to stereo mic everything, and I end up with 192 tracks of stereo mic stuff, when really all I really want to do is maybe take my piano and pan it slightly to the left, but I've got the stereo. The point is like, just think carefully about it. Do you need a stereo image on everything? If you don't, panning is your friend. So think about it. Do you need to be in stereo before you mic? Because mono can work in many situations. Probably 90% of the time I'm working in mono unless I'm room miking, overheads, etc. for drums, and probably a grand piano. A lot, not all, but a lot of the other time I'm barely using stereo mics. Number 6, this is an interesting one. I think just because a piece of equipment is new, or you're in a studio and it's like, you know, something that you've never seen before that you really want to try, that's great, but always balance that out with what you're trying to do. Don't just use gear for the sake of it. Don't just use gear because it looks flashy. When you're working with an artist and you've got time constraints, it's really smart to use equipment that you know really well and you know inside out, rather than spending an hour experimenting with a new compressor that's got lots of bells and whistles and lights all over it and VU meters and LEDs and all that stuff. You're much better off with something really simple that you understand. Because let's face it, even with the biggest albums in the world now, the budgets have shrunk massively. So no matter whether you're doing it in a home studio or you're doing it in a recording studio, you're probably going to find that you've got time constraints to get things done. So unless you're specifically wanting to experiment, go for equipment that you know really well, and you will get great results with the stuff that you know well. 7, label everything properly. You've seen the memes, I've posted them, everybody's posted them, where everything's called Audio 1, Audio 2, Audio 3, Audio 4. Now, it's funny, it's a joke, but it's really difficult. Even when it's a track that I've worked on my own, if I was to open that up and see 100 takes called audio, I'm gonna have to sit there and go back and listen to it. It only takes a few seconds to label properly. And if you label it properly, clearly and easily, you will move so much quicker around your session. So label really well. Not to mention, if you give it to an external mixer, they're going to love you if the kick in is called kick in, if the snare top is called snare top. Labeling properly is a wonderful thing. 8, this is one that could come in any order. Back up, and back up. We're in digital. It's wonderful. The digital's fairly stable, a lot more stable than ADAT tapes were, but things happen. Drives break down. Drives get erased. I've seen situations where an intern has taken a speaker out of a cabinet and put it on top of a hard drive. Yeah, a magnet on a hard drive. Complete, that was it. The hard drive was gone. The point is, there's all kinds of situations. So back up. I would go further than just suggesting that you always back up. I always have 2 mirrored drives. I actually use a software called Synchronizer Pro X. It's really popular in Los Angeles. Every studio has it. It's made by Qdia, and it's called Synchronizer Pro X. I have no affiliation with them, but I highly recommend it. You can use other ones, but the point is like my drives are mirrored. So you record on one drive, you have a backup of it. At any point during the day, you can copy from one to another, but I always leave it on sync. So basically what it does is it looks at both drives and makes sure they are identical. That's really important, you have identical drives. And frankly, when I move to that last stage, if there's an external mixer doing it, I will have a 3rd drive, and I would take all of the final mix files and put it onto that. That way I've got 2 hard drives with all of the album on it and a 3rd hard drive with mix files for the mixer. To me, there is nothing safer than backing up as many times as you can. I've had Many, many horror stories, but ultimately I've always come through because we've always backed up to multiple locations. So back up, and back up. 9, leave enough headroom when recording. There are many instances where I'm recording and I don't have a compressor on that particular mic. I'll be traveling with my laptop and maybe a little Audient I/O, and I don't actually have a hardware compressor with me. I've had this happen to me many times before. I'm traveling, I'm out of state, I've got my laptop set up, I go back to the hotel and I have to put a vocal idea down for a cartoon idea I'm working on. And I don't have that hardware compressor, and I go to sing and I've set my gain up for this, and of course I'm hit this and boom, I go into pure distortion. And as we all know, there's nothing worse than like 9 dB of crashed digital clipping. So what I should do in those situations, especially considering we're in the wonderful world of digital now, well, signal to noise is so much better. And these little IOs, like the little Audient I/O, is just so much cleaner than what I had even from the M-Box and before. So now I'm in a situation where I can print with a lot more headroom. I can print a lot quieter signal and allow myself, you know, a good like 6, 7, 8, 9 dBs worth of headroom over the top, even with the peaks that I seem to be getting when I'm singing. This, I believe, is really important when you don't have hardware compression, but just in general, something that's really worth leaving. The great thing about digital now is that given a decent sort of recording environment, like a quiet hotel room, I can boost that signal up and you'd be surprised there's no background noise. So leave yourself enough headroom, especially on things like vocals, where you might have a singer singing like this who suddenly wails and screams. Other acoustic instruments can do that as well. You know, a guitar player can be playing very soft. You sit there, you dial it in, you print a nice big fat single, and suddenly whang, they go down and boom, you're blowing up your system. No, you're going into full clipping. So it's really important to leave yourself enough headroom. This is a big one. 10. This is all encompassing. You, as the producer, the engineer, need to maintain your focus. What I mean by that is if you're bringing an artist, especially an artist that's fairly new to a studio, they're looking to you to be the voice of reason. They're looking to you to have knowledge. So if you're just going to experiment, say, with a vocal mic, like have 8 vocal mics in there, might be a little scary for them. Now, obviously, we can have this discussion about like, oh, we want to find the right microphone. Well, it's your job as the producer or the engineer to know your microphones and know your singer and have a good idea of where to start from. Now, it might not be perfect where you start from, but the point is it's not just a fun time to experiment with like 8 microphones. That's fine when you've got 6 weeks on an album and you've got a massive budget. You can sit there with your choice of all of these different famous microphones. But when somebody's paying you to come into your studio, you need to come across as focused and understanding. Now, obviously, a $1,000 microphone, a $500 to $1,000 microphone, these days is pretty darn good. No matter who the manufacturer is, those are wonderful microphones in that price range. So a decent-ish, like an LCT 550 up to a 414, from $500 to $1,500, there's a lot of great microphones in that price range. Some even cheaper. And the point is like 90% of the time they'll give you a good result on the vocalist. So think about that. Think about keeping the continuity, know your gear really well. Basically, it all just comes down to maintaining focus. Having the artist feel comfortable. Like, you know what you want, you're resolute, you're obviously understanding of their needs, you're understanding of their opinion, you're listening to what they say, but at the same time, you don't show fear or confusion, and you're not trying out multiple microphones and preamps and compressors and cables and power supplies and all that stuff, because they're going to sit there thinking, does this guy or girl know what they're doing? So maintaining your focus creates focus in the studio. All right. That's 10 of many, many tips. Those are the 10 that I feel are really important to me and come up all the time in recording sessions. There's plenty more. I'm sure there'll be a part 2, 3, 4, 5. But have a marvelous time recording and mixing. Please subscribe. Go to Produce Like a Pro. Sign up for the email list and you can get a whole bunch of free goodies. And of course, you can try the 14-day free trial of the Academy. Have a marvelous time recording and mixing. And I look forward to seeing you all again very soon.